This is Chris Collinsworth. Be sure to check out the PFF College podcast as our experts provide insight on all the league's top stories. Every game, every player, every play. Download and subscribe on iTunes or your favorite provider.
Hello and welcome to the Pro Football Focus Preview Podcast. It is time for the AFC and NFC Conference Championships. That time of the year already. Every year I say it, NFL season is just not long enough. Sam Monson, Mike Renner, joining me, David Tuckman, for this podcast and hopefully your pleasure. Sam, how are you?
I'm doing good, but I just stabbed myself in the roof of my mouth with a particularly violent snack that I was just eating before doing this. So I was doing better 5 minutes ago.
What particular snack was it? Yeah, I was wondering.
It's Twiglets, which are little like...
Oh, that sounds dangerous.
Exactly. Right before you even know what they are, it sounds something that could injure you. But it's basically a large stick of wheat something or other that if you catch it in the wrong way in your mouth acts as like a tent pole and just jabs straight into the roof of your mouth.
All I'm picturing is the scene from Return of the Jedi when Luke
there you go.
Puts the thing in the monster's mouth.
Happened.
There you go.
That's exactly what just happened.
You're that
only
monster.
on food level.
Right, of
You're not
course.
having holes in your mouth?
You should be happy you're still alive, by the way. Renner, how you been, buddy?
I've been fantastic.
Yeah?
Good week.
How's Cincinnati treating you?
Cincinnati's not too bad. Nothing to complain about.
What's the talk in town?
Coming this week to visit, so should be fun.
What's the local talk in town about Cincinnati with like Marvin Lewis and Andy Dalton and another really disappointing season?
People are just not excited, to say the least, because they're not heading. They're not heading the right direction. It seems like. I talked to one of the local beat writers, and he's just like, yeah, there's just nothing really like. No one, Andy Dalton's not amazing. AJ Green's hurt, and there's just, the drafts in recent years just haven't been good. So a lot of apathy.
Yeah, it has to be frustrating sometimes when you had your window open and you had all that talent and nothing really came of it. And now you can kind of see, the writing on the wall and the window is closing, and it must be disappointing. Couple that with the fact that you're in Cincinnati.
Whoa, okay. Cincinnati's not bad. You need to come to Cincinnati and check it out. I mean, the weather's not amazing, but it's not bad.
It's not Dublin.
Weather, team, there's many things that aren't that amazing about Cincinnati.
Hey, you have the Bearcats, right?
Yeah, they're exciting-ish. They got a new coach. He's gonna rekindle the Brian Kelly years.
Well, we have 4 games to cover, and of course, Mike's crappy bets, Mike's mediocre bets have gone to the side. We are back to the crappy bets once again.
Where are we getting the other 2 games from?
Oh, sorry, 2 games, right? 4 teams, 2 games. I'm going to watch both games twice because I miss football already.
That's fair enough.
Let's get into the first game here. Atlanta Falcons. I got to tell you, what a dream scenario for the Falcons. Not to take anything away from how they have played and, what got them here. But, you see Earl Thomas gets injured. They end up getting the 2nd seed where it looked like they might get the 3rd seed at one point. And then Dallas loses, so now they have home field. And they get to play Green Bay without Jordy Nelson. At least it looks like Jordy Nelson probably won't play. He did practice lightly, but they're not expecting him to play. Certain things certainly lining up for the Atlanta Falcons, Sam.
Yeah, other than having to face Aaron Rodgers, which
Good
is
point.
A fairly significant fly in that ointment. Other than that, it did align pretty well for them. I mean, home field advantage is a huge thing for a team like the Falcons, probably more than most teams. It's a big kind of emotional day as well, them getting to sort of say farewell to the Georgia Dome. I think will probably be make the crowd extra amped. Plus, Jack Farrell is going to be in the crowd, which, if anything, is going to add to the intensity. It's Jack being in the building. So, yeah, I think that's a big thing for the Falcons. The only real issue is that they are facing Aaron Rodgers, who is doing pretty ridiculous things right now. But this is the game that the NFL thinks everybody wants to watch, which is a complete and total shootout between two really good quarterbacks, two pretty good offenses, two defenses that can't withstand either side. It's basically an arena game writ large.
Yeah, it seems like every time a game gets hyped up as a shootout, it always kind of disappoints and doesn't end up getting to that level. But I honestly cannot see any way that this game does not end up with both teams scoring over 30 points. Like there's just no chance that doesn't happen in my mind because of how hot both quarterbacks are and how just inept both defenses are.
Well, let's talk about, obviously we know how good the offense is on both sides. Julio Jones, a little bit hampered with the toe. Jordy Nelson, obviously the ribs still bothering him. He's certainly questionable to play. Questionable might be optimistic, to be honest. Which team blinks first? I mean, is it just a matter of, okay, which team gets a big sack at the right time, which team gets a turnover at the right time, or who has the ball last that ends up winning this game?
Pretty much. I mean, this is a game that was decided by a point, I think, the first time they met. Again, both teams, both offenses were over 30 points. I think it's the same deal. We're going to see a complete and total shootout. It's going to be a case of if one team can time a stop in the right time in the game, if one team somehow manages a turnover at the crucial time. It's, this is a game that comes down to certain specific plays throughout the course of the game, and sometimes those can swing in your direction and decide the result. That's why it's such an issue with small sample sizes, because any couple of plays can change things. But yeah, this is, I think, one of those games that is going to come down to how much time is left on the clock with one of these offenses.
Mike, go ahead, Mike.
100% agree. I just think that it will come down. The team that wins and ultimately wins this game is the one who, recovers a fumble, makes an interception, doesn't miss a field goal, something like that. I think it's going to come down to a small mistake, one or two of those over the course of the game that will decide this, because just the way both offenses are playing, it's going to be, back and forth, point, like drive after drive after drive. There's going to be points put up on the board.
Well, which team is more likely to make the mistake, or I should better say, which team is more likely to force a mistake? I mean, can Vic Beasley, in the matchup that he has, can he get in Aaron Rodgers' face and maybe force a sack or two, possibly a fumble or a rushed pass? Can somebody on the Green Bay Packers defense do the same to Matt Ryan?
The one thing I think that is in Atlanta's favor is that Green Bay's injury report is like half the roster at this point. Like, the Falcons have a few people missing or did not participate. Green Bay seems to have half the team not at full participation at the moment. So that could potentially be a big deal. I don't like any one matchup in terms of Atlanta's defense against Green Bay's offense. There's nowhere where I think the Falcons have a clear advantage. And on the other side of the ball, I don't really like that either. The only single one-on-one matchup I think is in Green Bay's favor is Mike Daniels going up against Chris Chester, the right guard for the Falcons, who that Atlanta team I think has a top 10 offensive line, but right guard is a problem. And I don't think anybody has allowed more total pressure this season, if you include the playoffs, than Chris Chester among guards. He doesn't have the lowest pass blocking efficiency score, but he has, I think, the third worst behind Joshua Garnett, the rookie in San Francisco, and I forget who the second guy is. Mike Daniels is a top 10 interior defender. He can be disruptive against run and pass. So I think that's at least one-on-one matchup where there's a clear, definitive advantage in the Packers. I just don't know if it's enough to impact the game.
I'll say this. Vic Beasley, he may not have much success in terms of purely rushing the passer, because Brian Bulaga there on the right side is probably the best pass protecting right tackle in the NFL right now. It's been fantastic throughout the playoffs, but I don't think there's a defensive lineman in the NFL right now that can close on quarterbacks outside of the pocket like Vic Beasley can. So if Aaron Rodgers is thinking about scrambling outside to Vic Beasley's side, he's going to be in for a rude awakening, because Beasley can close so quickly, and we saw him force all those fumbles this year. I believe he has 6 forced fumbles on the year. And so if, just in terms of containing Aaron Rodgers in the pocket, I think that they're equipped to do that, at least Atlanta.
You talk about cementing Aaron Rodgers' legacy as one of the greatest of all time. Taking this team to the Super Bowl certainly would go a long way in that. We forget that just a couple of years ago, he was an onside kick away from getting to the Super Bowl, and obviously, that didn't work out for him. Thanks, Brendan Bostic. I think I got that right. No.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
I'm just shaking
I see Mike shaking his head like I got it wrong. I was like, I think it was Bostic, wasn't it? But I mean, if Aaron Rodgers can take this team to the Super Bowl and really put him on his back, which he has done, it'll be an amazing feat. We always talk about the team, and it looks like this is an amazing game. In fact, the over/under 61.5. I can't remember the last time a total was that high. Yet I still like the over.
Oh yeah.
Talk about special teams for a second, Sam. Is there a possibility on either side that a team can get an edge there?
Mike doesn't want to talk about special teams. Mike
hates
refuses
special
to
teams.
acknowledge the existence of special teams.
I'm going to take a quick nap.
Yeah, especially because Mike is going to have Gordon McGuinness living with him for about 7 weeks. So
Ooh.
Mike is probably going to have an extended period of special teams talk. So he's got to avoid it when he can. I don't think special teams is going to be a big factor in this game. The Falcons, I think, have Eric Weems, who's one of the better special teams players in the NFL, but I don't think that it's a massive factor in this game. I don't think either the units are monstrous. None of them have a devastating return guy. Any given Sunday, special teams can become a factor if a play breaks the right way, but it's not something that leaps out on the page as an issue or as a key defining edge in one direction or the other. Especially, Mason Crosby had that amazing game connecting from 50. I guess he has the range advantage over Matt Bryant in Atlanta, but they're two very good kickers. So yeah, I don't think this is a big deal in this game.
Mike, anything to add, even though you hate special teams? No, he's shaking his head. He doesn't even want to talk about it at all. Is there a possibility the Green Bay Packers, run defense, certainly up and down all year. They've been exposed by the Dallas Cowboys, but that's not saying much. Can the Atlanta Falcons run the ball, Mike? I mean, can they have success running the ball and possibly keep Aaron Rodgers off the field?
That matchup I went back and forth on. If I looked through the last game, basically Green Bay's plan, and Green Bay didn't worry too much about the run. They were more focused, much more on Matt Ryan, and Atlanta didn't have too much success. I think Devontae Freeman didn't run too well. I think he had something like 30 yards or so, 32 yards or so. I think that Green Bay and Tom Capers are willing to play nickel down after down after down and just say, hey, we think we can stop you with these guys that we have up front. And I don't blame them because their front seven is actually pretty good. I ranked them earlier in this week in my front seven rankings that are up on our website now as a top 10 line, as a top 10 defensive front seven in the NFL. They're actually a fairly good unit. They go about 5 to 6 deep along that front, along the defensive line of quality players who can stop the run. So I think that won't be, I don't think they're going to worry too much about that. Their focus right now is basically how do we protect, Demarius Randall, Ladarius Gunter, those cornerbacks in the back end from getting absolutely torched by Julio Jones. Last time they did match up, they had Ladarius Gunter shadow Julio Jones a little bit, but they weren't playing just straight man coverage. Ladarius, guard him one-on-one. They gave him a ton of help. So I think that the run game, while I just don't think it'll factor too much into the final outcome.
Sam, about the receivers, obviously Atlanta Falcons have a bevy of great receivers. Julio Jones, if not the best, certainly top 5 receiver in the league. If his toe is hampering him and he's more of a decoy in this particular game, how does that affect the Atlanta Falcons?
Yeah, well, obviously it's a huge deal. I mean, you're talking about, like you said, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. They've got some secondary and tertiary targets, and they can go to guys, but those guys work because Julio Jones is such a devastating weapon. And when you start going from Julio Jones to Mohamed Sanu to a Taylor Gabriel, Aldrick Robinson, Justin Hardy, they're guys that I think function pretty well as a receiving core, but I don't like the idea that is your receiving core. I think it's a massive issue. We're going to see how healthy. I suspect it's not going to be a major problem. He's going to tough it out, and he's been playing through that kind of injury before. I think we'll see Julio Jones at least on the field and effective, if not at his devastating best.
He was hurt last time they played, right? Or in some capacity as well, if I remember correctly. Or am I?
Yeah, I think he's missed time.
Or he didn't miss it, but he was limited at least with.
No. I think he's missed time, and he's been sort of nicked up and down across the season.
When it's all said and done, who do we like, Mike?
I ended up picking the Packers in this one. A few reasons why. One, in that first matchup, the Packers didn't have Ty Montgomery. They didn't have Jared Cook. Basically, those guys have somewhat carried this offense through the second half of the year with what they've been able to do. And it's just been a different offense. And on the other side, I just think that the Packers front seven is the front seven that's capable of making more plays in terms of sacks, in terms of forced fumbles, that sort of thing. I just don't see Atlanta getting to Aaron Rodgers. So for those two reasons, I'm going with the Packers.
Yeah, I went the other way. I went with Atlanta. I just think that they are the better overall offense. Rodgers may be playing better at the moment, though, to be honest. There isn't much in it. But the Falcons have a more complete roster there. They've got the ability to run the ball with those two dynamic runners out of the backfield. They've got a more diverse and complete receiving core. I think that offense at home is going to be firing on all cylinders. I think this is going to be a shootout, though, and it's almost a toss-up.
Yeah, it's certainly a tough game to gauge. One thing that I'm curious about, Sam, from a historical point of view, how good is this Atlanta offense? I was looking at their schedule, and I found that their schedule was remarkably easy. I mean, their out-of-division games were Jacksonville, the Rams, the 49ers, San Diego. They got to play New Orleans twice. And I'm just wondering, is their offense historically one of... I mean, I know on paper, and you look at the stats, their offense is one of the greatest of all time. Is it that good, or do you think their offense is more a result of who they played this year?
No, it's not one of the greatest of all time, but it's a very, very good offense, and it's probably the best offense in the NFL this season. They didn't have the hardest schedule in the world, but they then put 36 points up against the Seahawks. Okay, it was a Seahawks team without Earl Thomas and on the road, and that makes a big difference on both those counts. But that's a significant team to be putting up a big score on, and they did that pretty comfortably. I don't think this is one of the best offenses of all time. It's not even one of the best offenses. Well, it's not even the best offense in the past few years. I don't think it's as good as that Denver team from a few years ago. But it's a really good offense, and there's no real holes on it.
Their ability, though, to scheme open wide receivers down the field is second to none. This is one of the best, the most effective, just pure deep passing offenses in NFL history. Matt Ryan, on throws of 20-plus yards, had a quarterback rating of 136.1. He threw 0 interceptions on those throws and had over 1,000, led the NFL in yards on those throws. So he was just fantastic on deep balls all season long. And against this Green Bay defense, who has been absolutely shredded by deep balls, I think that's going to be the biggest thing to watch. Is he going to get those splash plays down the field?
Not even they're not even just good at scheming guys open deep, but I think they're really good at scheming guys open generally. We talk about how you defend really top receivers and whether you put guys on tracking them and that kind of thing. And as good as Julio Jones is and his ability to win one-on-one matchups, they're also really good at getting him open off the line and making sure that you can't just stick a guy on him and cover him one-on-one. If you want to try and put a Richard Sherman on him all game, they're going to stack him and they're going to give you free releases off the line. They're going to make it so that you can't just put a guy in his face and have hands on him from the line of scrimmage onwards. And I think that's an underrated aspect of that offense, is that they help their really good players succeed, not just rely on them to do it.
I've been so impressed by Atlanta. I have not been a believer all year in them, but their ability to also use their running backs, if they're not running the ball well, use them in the passing game as well, whether it's Tevin Coleman or Devonta Freeman. One of them seems to kind of go off each week in the passing game, and you pair that with their receivers, whether it's Taylor Gabriel or Julio Jones or whoever each week. It seems like somebody else is doing it. Matt Ryan now 2-4 in his playoff career. He looked fantastic last week. Completely, not rattled at all, even though Seattle came down and scored. I think Atlanta is the better team, and I think Atlanta should win at home. If they don't, it's all because of Aaron Rodgers. I'd have to imagine. And because of those reasons, I'm going to go with Atlanta this week. I think it's going to be a close game, though. Let's head over to the AFC, where we have a familiar matchup. It's Ben Roethlisberger traveling up to New England to face Tom Brady. For those of us who love nostalgia, like to reminisce, we're going to love this game. For people who like new things, this might not be the game you're looking for. Mike, break it down for us.
I do not want to come off as a Patriots hater because I am not. I picked them to win the Super Bowl before the season. I picked them at the start of the playoffs. I think they are the most complete team in the NFL. But I have never seen a team have an easier road to get to where they are right now than the New England Patriots. They have 2 wins versus playoff teams that had their starting quarterbacks this year. One was the Texans, one was the Dolphins. And then they beat the Texans again in the playoffs. Those are not, quality wins, so to speak. And the best 2 offenses they faced all season were the Arizona Cardinals and the Buffalo Bills. They just really have not been tested by a team like Pittsburgh with a full strength. They did play Pittsburgh earlier, but it was with Landry Jones. So they have not been tested by a complete sort of offense like the Pittsburgh Steelers all season long, which is just somewhat concerning. It's just kind of, they just haven't seen, we don't know how they're going to react when they do face someone like this. So that to me is very interesting. It's just, I don't know what to necessarily make of it. I don't know if it's going to impact at all, but I think this will be a closer game and a tighter game than probably the line at the moment suggests.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting aspect of this game, that the Patriots really haven't been tested much at all. And even like Houston, we talked about it earlier in the week, that offense is just so completely and totally inept that it was tough to make anything out of that game. But the defense gave New England some problems. They actually played them tough and made life difficult, and forced them into some bad plays and some it made them work to put up those points. And it kind of got away from them at the end because the offense just couldn't do anything to help them out. But even that side of the ball, I think you can test this New England team and actually make them look a lot more human than they have for much of the season. So I think it's a really interesting matchup purely because this Pittsburgh team is better than anything New England has seen.
Talk about Leveon Bell for a second. He might be the most dominating running back in the NFL right now, just in what he can do in every aspect of the game. And as we saw, Mike Tomlin not afraid to ride him. Jerry Jones and Garrett in Dallas should probably take a cue from that, because this could be Dallas in the NFC Championship game if they had. But Le'Veon Bell, I expect him to touch the ball 30 times. He's probably going to put up somewhere in the neighborhood of 175 yards. But if there's anything that Bill Belichick is really good at, it's taking away your number one offensive threat. How does that matchup play out, Sam? Mike,
I actually don't know if you want to take away Le'Veon Bell. I think you're almost better off kind of leaning on them and letting them, or leaving it to Bell and kind of letting him, go off, but be contained, not just run riot all over you, but just have steady production and not being eviscerated in the passing game, than you are going all out to stop Le'Veon Bell and letting Antonio Brown torch you for huge gains and big game-breaking plays. I think the Patriots will probably accept him taking 30 carries to go 150 yards or so, and not seeing that as an unsuccessful way of attacking this game.
I 100% agree. And I said it last week with the Chiefs. I said, Le'Veon Bell going for 150 is not going to kill you. Ben Roethlisberger going for 350 is what's going to kill you. Going for 180 to Antonio Brown is what's going to kill you. And I think we saw that with the Chiefs only giving up 18 points. They let them run first down, second down, and then at some point during the drive, they knew they were going to get a stop when Ben Roethlisberger had to pass, and they did. And so they did that 6 times. They gave up 6 field goals and still should have, had a good chance to win in the end.
Hold on a second, Mike. I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Okay. You cannot for a second believe that KC's strategy worked. If they played that game out 10 times, Pittsburgh's winning 10 times, And 7 of those games, Pittsburgh's winning by 21. Because a couple of those field goals, you can't count on, Ben Roethlisberger throwing that interception in the end zone. One of those field goals is going to be a touchdown, probably 2 or 3 of them under normal circumstances. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger was bad last week. Antonio Brown only went for 100 yards, and Pittsburgh dominated them.
Well, I think the thing is that Kansas City knew that their third down defense, they knew that they could play third down defense against. I mean, they knew they could get stops if they got them into enough third downs. So, I mean, you let them run first and second down, all of a sudden they don't get the first down and it's a 3rd and 3. And I think to some degree it worked. It wasn't that Roethlisberger was necessary. He was only really bad on those third downs. He had the lucky pick, yeah. But, I mean, holding them to, even if they convert one of those field goals into a touchdown, holding them to something like 20-24 would not have been bad either against, that offense. So I don't think the strategy necessarily didn't work. I think that, it was just an offense that you have to kind of contain. You can't, like I said, you're not going to shut him down. You're not going to shut Le'Veon Bell down. You have to pick which one you want to focus on.
I also think at this point, teams kind of are relying on the idea that Ben Roethlisberger is going to make some mistakes because he has not been good for a lot of this season. And when he's been bad, he's been really bad. I mean, it's not even that he's just been sort of consistently a little bit worse than a year ago. It's that he's been all over the map so far this year. And when he's been bad, he's made some horrible decisions and some ridiculously bad plays. So when you're looking at kind of how you can exploit this offense, I think you're definitely better making them put the ball in Roethlisberger's hands and kind of relying on the fact that he'll give you some opportunities. I mean, you do it the other way around. Le'Veon Bell's probably not putting the ball on the ground, and there's no upside to that. There's no way that you can kind of take advantage of what that does.
Talk about Ben Roethlisberger for a second. He was drafted in that fantastic 2004 draft class. And it's funny, you and I, we talked about this, quarterbacks traditionally not playing into their late 30s. But we see, Tom Brady and obviously Peyton Manning, Brett Favre have kind of spoiled us. Mike Renner's dying, by the way, on the side here, but we're just ignoring it. But, you looked at, we're looking at Eli Manning from that draft class, kind of obviously in a decline. We're looking at Ben Roethlisberger, who's always kind of been this wild freelancer, but was able to get away with it because of his physical skills. I'm wondering, are we seeing the beginning of the deterioration of Ben Roethlisberger's physical skills, but because he's still a freelancer, it's catching up with him?
I don't really think there's any kind of physical decline there, but I think that this season has been notably worse than he has been in the past. Just in terms of decision making, I mean, you can still see the good and the real Ben Roethlisberger there. He's still got the arm, he's still got the ability to move around the pocket and to escape, and to the sort of general awkwardness that his physical size and strength gives you when you're trying to bring him down and stop all those plays. So I think physically he's still there, but for whatever reason, he's just been off the boil mentally this season, and we've seen him make mistakes that he hasn't made in the past. And actually, when you look at the sort of distribution of his grading, he's still making big plays, which is why he's still been successful. You can make a lot of mistakes if you're prepared to offset those with a lot of big plays. But when you get to the playoffs and you start facing better teams, then we talked before about how it comes down to one or two key plays, and if you get one of those turnovers, he might not have enough of the big plays to offset it on the other end, and that could be enough.
Watching Roethlisberger, I wouldn't be surprised. So every year we hear about a guy who after the season, he was hampering this shoulder injury and now he needs 2 surgeries. Just watching Roethlisberger, I wouldn't be surprised if he has surgery on his ankle, knee, and shoulder after the season, because he just looks like he's kind of lumbering or laboring injury out there game after game. Just doesn't look completely comfortable. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. I have no inside information whatsoever. But just looking at him, maybe it's just who Ben Roethlisberger is, but I wouldn't be surprised if something's just he's hampering something, been hampering something all season long.
Well, who Ben Roethlisberger is when he's injured, he lets us all know about it.
He's also never exactly been a graceful athlete. He's one of these guys that's just always been a large lump of human clay in the middle of that, offense. And that's a pretty tricky thing to try and take down when he happens to be it's like, every time you see Ben Roethlisberger getting sacked or trying to get sacked in the pocket, kind of it brings back images of those wildlife programs where you've got like 6 lions trying to take down a big elephant. They're just hanging off him, and he's carrying around 3 different flailing bodies as he tries to get rid of the ball.
Sam, you probably will not be called in to deliver Ben Roethlisberger's eulogy. On his tombstone, here lies a huge lump of human clay.
And a big lumbering elephant.
Let's talk about the Antonio Brown matchup and the rest of the receivers on that Pittsburgh team and who they'll be matched up against the New England defense. Because we kind of know about New England's offense. We know Tom Brady has always historically ripped apart Pittsburgh's defense, and we'll get to that in a second. But on the defensive side of the ball, New England has been really good this year. But to your point, Mike, they haven't played a lot of great teams. How does New England's defense match up against Pittsburgh's receivers?
This, to me, is easily the most intriguing matchup of the game because of what I said earlier about not having faced great receivers, as well as just the fact that Bill Belichick always comes with something new, always comes with something that you probably haven't seen, or something that, is a little different than what everyone else in the NFL does. Last time they faced off, they had Malcolm Butler follow Antonio Brown, and they didn't really give him help. It wasn't a follow with someone over the top, a safety over the top all the time. But at times it was Malcolm Butler was in man coverage while everyone else kind of playing zone. So they're kind of just like, hey, we're going to make sure that we don't lose track of him in the middle of our zone, because Antonio Brown, like we saw on that 3rd down play against the Chiefs last week, so good at finding the holes in the zone, so good at, with that kind of rapport with Roethlisberger, knowing where each other will be. So I imagine they will do that again. But the thing is, on 3rd downs when they played last time, they basically rolled safety over the top. Anytime Antonio Brown was alone on his side without another receiver on that side, they rolled safety over the top. So I think they will game plan for Antonio Brown just because there's not really another option along that defense, along that Steelers wide receiver core that I'm going to get too worried about.
Sam, that was what I was going to get to. If Bill Belichick is successful in limiting Antonio Brown, does Pittsburgh have other receivers that can exploit the New England secondary?
It's almost like the Julio Jones thing in that it's Antonio Brown and a bunch of guys that are pretty good complements, but you don't want to be relying on them to win the game for you. The thing is, I don't know that that's going to be an issue, because I don't think that Malcolm Butler is capable of shutting Antonio Brown down. Malcolm Butler's a lot like Chris Harris in that pretty much against anybody else other than Antonio Brown, he can do a pretty good job of shadowing them and taking them out of the game, and you would bank on him winning that one-on-one matchup. But the same way that Chris Harris hadn't allowed a touchdown for like 35 straight games, and then he faced Antonio Brown and allowed 2 of them in the one game, that tends to happen to Malcolm Butler when he's asked to try and cover Antonio Brown. And he's done it 2 games running now in each of the last 2 seasons. He's been targeted 19 times. He's given up 14 receptions for 220 something yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. So he has basically been gashed by Antonio Brown. That's even when, as Mike said, they've rolled safeties in his direction at times. So I think they'll probably do it again, because I think they like the way that kind of works for the defense overall. But I suspect Antonio Brown is going to get the better of that matchup, and it's just a case of how the rest of the guys, whether that amounts to a net win for that Pittsburgh offense or whether it's just Antonio Brown that's going to win.
Ladarius Green, by the way, practicing, he has been upgraded to limited in practice, whether he plays or not. Do we think that's a factor, Renner?
I do. He's probably their second most dynamic weapon after Antonio Brown when fully healthy. If he's still limited, though, this late in the week, that's obviously concerning. And the fact that he just really has...
Mike's choking again here. Mike's going to... It's bad enough to live in Cincinnati. Mike's going to die in Cincinnati. This is terrible. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
And the fact that he just really has not, played that much this year. But when he is on the field, he has been successful in terms of, stretching the defense out, making them respect the middle of the field. So I think that's just another weapon that if he does play, that the Patriots have to worry about.
The other really interesting factor in this game, I think, is Pittsburgh's offensive line, because I think it's the best offensive line in the league right now. Obviously, Dallas, and we ranked Tennessee as our number one at the end of the season, but that was based essentially on the entire year. The full 16-game schedule. This Pittsburgh line now is playing better than their baseline or their average over the year. It's playing as well as it's played all season. There's no weak link. They've got 5 guys that are playing at a kind of Pro Bowl level right now. That gives them a monstrous platform to be working from in both the run and the pass game. I think that could be a huge aspect.
And of course, if Le'Veon Bell, sorry, Mike, I was going to say, if Le'Veon Bell does have that much success on the ground and the offensive line can control the ball and the line of scrimmage, you keep Tom Brady and the Patriots offense off the field. Go ahead, Mike.
One interesting wrinkle that I believe the Patriots will run, because they run it a lot, is to employ a bear front, which is basically a nose tackle over the center, 2 defensive tackles on the outside shoulders of the guard, and then 2 outside linebackers, outside the tackle or tight end there. The Chiefs did it against last weekend against the Steelers, and on those plays, Le'Veon Bell had 6 carries for 19 yards. When you employ a bear front, it kind of leaves you vulnerable in terms of just for big plays, because pretty much all your defenders are along the line of scrimmage. You have 1 linebacker off the ball. But at the same time, there are just run concepts that don't work well against a bear front. You limit run concepts that the offense can run, and you limit what they can do in pass protection, and basically put the center on an island and make him, go one-on-one in pass protection. So from that regard, I think we'll see that a lot, because the Patriots also employ that defensive front a lot. But the thing is, last time they played, they had Jamie Collins, the Patriots did. This time, they don't have Jamie Collins. Having Jamie Collins as the guy to clean up linebacker in the middle behind that front would be nice for them. Don't have that luxury this time. I'm not sure they'll feel comfortable enough to employ it that much.
Of course, Jamie Collins traded to the Cleveland Browns during season in what was just a very Belichickian move. No other way to say it. Let's talk about the other side of the ball here, the Patriots offense versus that Pittsburgh defense. I read somewhere, and I thought it was quite interesting, Pittsburgh wasn't a big blitzing team early in the season, but during their win streak, the last 9 games, they have blitzed, I want to say, the second or third most in the NFL, and they put a lot more pressure. Their defense has actually been kind of the catalyst for this win streak, Sam.
The Steelers' defense is interesting because it's such a high variance unit in terms of it can be anywhere from really, really good to pretty bad, depending on who turns up to play, who has a good game, who has a bad game. And almost all of the players in it are pretty high variance in terms of their consistency. And they've been using guys like Ryan Shazier and Lawrence Timmons, their inside linebackers on the blitz, and those guys have both been pretty productive when you can get them matched up on running backs. I think they're pretty good at doing that in terms of employing twists and stunts up the middle and getting those guys to run free up the gut, which in and of itself, I think is probably quite an important factor in this game, because the area that Tom Brady still struggles with the most is if you can get pressure right up the middle, if you can get guys in his face early. If you can only get them off the edge, I think he's pretty good at being able to step around that and mitigate that kind of pressure. But those linebackers tend to have struggles sometimes in coverage. They're both really athletic, but they both have a tendency to dive on the first thing they see in a play. And if it's the second thing that's where the ball's going to go, they can be wildly out of position.
The thing I like most about this Steelers defense is that there's no real weak spot. There's nothing that you can attack and say, I'm going to attack there because that's where we're going to have success. That's where we have a matchup problem. That's where, we have a matchup advantage. And the fact is, when Brady sees a matchup advantage, he's going to exploit it as much as possible. We saw that a few years back against the Ravens in the playoffs. He attacked Rashawn Melvin play after play after play, had over 200 yards against him, the cornerback for the Ravens. So if he finds a weak spot in a defense, he'll attack it. But there's not really a weak spot for as average as we've graded the Steelers linebackers in coverage. It's basically because they miss a lot of tackles in coverage. They cover a lot of ground, though. Lawrence Timmons and Ryan Shazier, they have the ability to basically guards a guy like Julian Edelman, guard the guys that they have that the Patriots throw out in the slot there. So I don't think it's a great matchup for the Patriots offense, in that respect.
Let me ask you then, traditionally, New England has spread them out, and basically Brady has gotten rid of the ball very, very quickly. And this team is no different. I mean, you've got Chris Hogan, you've got Martellus Bennett, you've got Julian Edelman, obviously James White, Dion Lewis out of the backfield. Is Pittsburgh deep enough to withstand that when they spread them out? Because that's what traditionally has been the issue, where New England has dominated them, from an offensive standpoint.
I think they can cover it. Like Mike said, those linebackers are athletic enough to do it. The issue, I think, is a couple of things. One, it's that this year Tom Brady has more time than he's had in the past because the offensive line is no longer a problem. Last year that offensive line was bad, and they basically had to be the quickest team in the league in terms of getting rid of the ball, just to stop him getting hit and sacked all the time. This year, the line's actually pretty good. Dante Scarnecchia coming back has made a massive improvement. Guys like Shaq Mason has looked now like a legitimate right guard. Marcus Cannon has become a second-team All-Pro. That offensive line is suddenly decent, and Tom Brady's average time to throw has increased significantly from a year. He's adding like a couple of tenths, I think, to his average time to throw from a year ago. So that's an issue for Pittsburgh. They have longer to try and cover. The other thing is, like I said, I think those linebackers can kind of do it, but I think they can be moved. And, if Brady figures out a way to show them one thing or make them think that, they've got to cover a slant, and then actually what's coming in is the route in behind them, the dig, and suddenly these guys are 10 yards out of the way on a pass over the middle. I think that's where you can get these linebackers, is basically giving them a kind of bait and switch deal in terms of route combinations and just moving them out of the way of that middle of that defense and coming in behind them.
Mike, quickly, LeGarrette Blount, do you think this is going to be a LeGarrette Blount game, or is it going to be more of a Dion Lewis, James White game? Can the New England Patriots have success running the ball?
I think it'll be a Dion Lewis, James White game. I think they want to get those running backs in space against the linebackers because of what I said. They're going to miss some tackles. Dion Lewis can break, tackles in space. So you're going to want to have those guys as a dump off type of option. Although we've seen at times Pittsburgh can get undisciplined against the run, but I think that's been shored up as the season's gone along. They've gotten a lot better in that regard recently. So I don't think that it's going to be LeGarrette Blount 25 carries. I think we'll see more of a spread out game, like you said.
Sam, when it's all said and done, who wins this game?
I am going with the Patriots on this one. Almost entirely, I think, because of the quarterback. When you've got a close game, I think this is a pretty close, evenly matched game. I think you got to lean with the team with the better proven quarterback. And right now, Roethlisberger is just too inconsistent. Brady didn't have a good game last week against Houston, which is a little bit concerning given the kind of cupcake schedule he's had over the regular season. But I think there's more kind of built up equity there in Brady than there is in Roethlisberger this year.
I think it's going to be the Steelers. For the reason you had one reason that they're going to win, my one reason is that the Steelers' offensive line right now is so damn good. I just don't think people appreciate how ridiculous they've been over the second half of the season. The last 2 weeks on, I believe it was over 40 some dropbacks, 50 dropbacks. Ben Roethlisberger has been under pressure 7 total times. 7 times. And it's not like this Patriots defensive line is that good. I think I ranked them around 18th in my front 7 rankings. They got pressure on quarterbacks, the 21st best rate in the NFL. They're just not a defensive line that's built to rush the passer. They're built somewhat to stop the run. So I just think Ben Roethlisberger will have all day to throw. If you give him all day to throw with Antonio Brown, with some of the weapons that they have, I just think you'll be successful. So I'm going to lean Pittsburgh in this one.
I find it interesting because I feel like the 2 hottest, most dominating players in the NFL right now are Aaron Rodgers and Le'Veon Bell. And I feel like in both cases, if they have the games they've been having, both their teams can win. They can put their teams on their shoulders and will them to victory. I think both of these players are capable of doing that. That said, I'm going with the Falcons and I'm going with the Patriots. I just think, Brady's going to spread them out, and I think Brady is just, when it's all said and done, I just think Brady and that Patriots defense is going to be good enough. I think Ben Roethlisberger has been shaky enough. I don't think field goals are going to get it done this week versus the Patriots, and so for those reasons, I like the Patriots. But this is time. It's my favorite time of the week. It's Mike's Crappy Bets. Cue the music. Mike?
I kind of gave them away with my picks here. I picked the
did.
dogs in both. So I do like both of them to cover, obviously. And then, like you said, I already said the over in the Green Bay Atlanta game. If it's 61.5, bang the over. Both teams are going to be in the 30s. So,
you know what? I don't know if I like either game. Green Bay is getting like 4.5. Pittsburgh is getting like 6, depending on where you're looking. I don't know if I like either one. But I do like the over. I think this is one of those games where you almost can't have enough scoring. And I feel like in a playoff matchup, the team's not going to stop. You know what I mean? In a regular season game, if the game is out of hand, you could take the starters out, you take your foot off the pedal, whatever it might be. This game could be 28-7 at halftime, and even if the Atlanta Falcons are up 28-7, they know they're playing against Aaron Rodgers. They're not going to take their foot off the pedal. They're going to keep scoring, and obviously no matter how much Green Bay is down or Atlanta's down, they're going to keep trying to get back in this game. I would be comfortable betting the over, even if it was 63.5. I'll put it that way. Sam, any lasting thoughts in what will be... we only have 3 games left, unless, of course, you count the Pro Bowl, and nobody counts the Pro Bowl. We only have 3 NFL games left this season. It seems to go too quick each and every year. Anything you want to plug over at PFF?
No, I think Mike has done a pretty good job of subtly dropping in his defensive front rankings, which is what everybody wants to go read this time. So you can check those out at profootballfocus.com. But other than that, I think we're good.
Okay, fair enough. As always, guys, if you want to send us a tweet, you can. It's at PFF_Mike, at PFF_Sam. I'm at Tuck on Sports. If you can, do us a favor, head over to iTunes, write us a review. We really do appreciate it. And, of course, if you are new to Pro Football Focus, check out the website, profootballfocus.com. I am involved with this because I was a fan. These guys do a great job. Nobody works harder. Literally every single play. I make fun of Cincinnati, but these guys do a great job, and nothing but love for them. Guys, enjoy the games this weekend.
You too.